Hey everyone! Today we're exploring another chilling and disturbing case. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay engaged. It really means a lot. I truly appreciate it. Now, take a deep breath and let's dive in. To the world, they were the perfect couple, young, ambitious, and madly in love. Their wedding was the stuff of fairy tales. And their honeymoon destination? The breathtaking island paradise of Bora Bora. But behind the stage, Instagram smiles and dreamy sunset photos was a storm brewing, a darkness no one saw coming. He was a decorated commercial pilot, disciplined, charming, and respected. She was a bright, beautiful woman whose life seemed to finally be falling into place. Friends envied their whirlwind romance, but they didn't know the truth, that beneath his polished uniform was a man hiding secrets, dangerous secrets. 3 days into their honeymoon, the couple's romantic getaway turned into a scene of horror. In their luxury overwater bungalow, the woman was found dead, her body battered, her face unrecognizable, and her wedding ring missing. Her killer? The very man she had just promised to spend forever with. The investigation uncovered more than just a crime of passion. It revealed an intricate web of lies, whispers of infidelity, a secret life the groom had hidden for years, and a life insurance policy worth millions, signed just days before the wedding. To prosecutors, this wasn't a moment of rage, it was premeditated murder. And as police dug deeper, they discovered that his charm wasn't just an act, it was a weapon. Former lovers, hidden affairs, and disturbing psychological behaviors painted a chilling portrait of a man who had been planning his escape from the marriage before it had even begun. This is not just a story of honeymoon gone wrong. It's a story of betrayal so deep and greed so consuming that it turned paradise into a prison. And for one bride, it became the last stop on a journey she never knew was leading to her death. Captain Jonathan Reynolds had the kind of job most men only dream of, flying sleek commercial jets across continents, staying in 5-star hotels, sipping champagne at rooftop lounges in cities across the world. But with that job came freedom, and with freedom came temptation. To his colleagues, he was a consummate professional. To his passengers, a trusted figure in crisp uniform and polished shoes. But to those who knew him intimately, Jonathan lived two lives. One as a dedicated pilot, the other as a man constantly chasing the thrill of forbidden affairs. Former colleagues said, "We all knew he was married before, and we knew how it ended." His first wife left after finding out about, well, more than one woman. He just had this hunger. It didn't matter if he was married or not. What no one knew at the time was that Reynolds' hunger wasn't just for women. He had an equally dangerous appetite for money, and he was no stranger to manipulating those closest to him to get it. Investigators would later find a $2.5 million life insurance policy taken out in his new wife's name, with Reynolds as the sole beneficiary. She never told her friends about it. In fact, many believe she never even knew she'd signed it. But before the honeymoon, there were red flags. Late-night texts she couldn't see. Mysterious cash withdrawals. Entire weekends where he'd vanish between flights. Friends begged her to delay the wedding. But she was in love, and love can make you blind. By the time they landed in Bora Bora, his plan was already in motion. He'd booked the most private bungalow on the island. No close neighbors, no staff walking by. To the world, it looked like the ultimate romantic gesture. But to police, it looked like the perfect place to kill someone without witnesses. And on the third night of their honeymoon, while the rest of the island slept under a blanket of stars, something in that bungalow turned deadly. March 18th, 11:42 p.m. Guests at the St. Regis Bora Bora reported hearing muffled screams drifting over the water. At first, they thought it was laughter, a couple having a heated argument, maybe even an intoxicated lover's quarrel. But what happened inside Bungalow 308 was far darker. According to Jonathan Reynolds, it started with an argument about money. He claimed his wife was upset about the wedding costs, about how much debt they were in. But investigators later learned that she had no idea he had drained her savings account just weeks earlier. When we arrived, she was lying on the floor beside the bed. There were severe injuries to her face and neck, signs of strangulation, and multiple bruises consistent with blunt force trauma. This was not a fall, this was an assault. Jonathan told police his wife had slipped in the bathroom and hit her head. But forensic evidence told a different story, one of violent struggle. The furniture was overturned. Blood droplets were found on the wall near the headboard, and her fingernails held skin fragments that matched Jonathan's DNA. 911 operator. What's your emergency? Jonathan. My wife, she fell. She's not breathing. Please send someone. But the call raised suspicion. His voice sounded panicked, yes. But investigators noticed he never once asked for instructions on CPR. Instead, he repeatedly mentioned his location, emphasizing how far they were from help, as if laying the groundwork for a tragic accident story. It took nearly 15 minutes for resort staff to reach them. By the time paramedics arrived, she was cold to touch. Official time of death, 12:09 a.m. Later, police discovered something chilling. Her wedding ring was missing. The next morning, divers found it beneath the bungalow, lodged between coral rocks. To authorities, this wasn't just a sign of a violent fight. It was a symbol. He had stripped her of her vows before ending her life. And yet, Jonathan's story would change not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each new version digging him deeper into suspicion. But it wasn't just his lies that sealed his fate. It was what they found on his phone. Evidence of a life his wife never knew existed. Jonathan Reynolds thought he was smart. He deleted messages. He cleared his call logs. He even turned off cloud backups before boarding that flight to Bora Bora. But what he didn't know is that digital footprints have a way of surviving. When investigators cracked into his phone, they unlocked an entire second life, hidden messaging apps, anonymous email accounts, and a series of conversations that made the so-called accident look more like the final act in a carefully laid plan. Text from Jonathan. Once this is over, I'll be set for life. Reply. You just have to make it look like it wasn't you. These weren't just exchanges with friends. They were with a woman in Miami, a flight attendant he'd been seeing for nearly a year. She had no idea he was on his honeymoon. To her, he was just away on a long trip. Analyst. We found multiple searches in the months leading up to honeymoon. Quickest way to cause head injury. Life insurance claim after spouse dies abroad. How long for body to decompose in water. This wasn't random curiosity, it was research. And the life insurance policy? The documents showed it had been electronically signed from his laptop just 10 days before the wedding. The IP address? Matched to his home office, not hers. But the most damning evidence was a string of messages sent just hours before her death. At 10:14 p.m., Jonathan texted the woman in Miami. It's almost done. Soon I'll be free. By 12:09 a.m., his wife was dead. Prosecutors now had a timeline. Motive, greed. Means, a secluded bungalow. Opportunity, a new bride who trusted him completely. But even with all of this, Jonathan maintained his innocence, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, until one more witness came forward. Someone who saw and heard what happened that night. Until now, the case against Jonathan Reynolds was built on evidence. Blood spatter, phone records, and insurance documents. But what prosecutors didn't have was an eyewitness. That changed when a honeymooning couple from New Zealand came forward. Mark and Olivia were staying 2 bungalows away from Jonathan and his wife. On the night of March 18th, just after 11:40 p.m., they heard shouting. At first, they thought it was harmless bickering, until the sound changed. Olivia, it turned violent. There was this loud crash, like furniture being thrown. And then, I heard her scream. It wasn't just a cry, it was a scream for help. I'll never forget it. Mark recalled hearing a man's voice, low, angry, followed by what sounded like muffled thuds. Olivia, panicked, told him to call the front desk. But before he could, the noise stopped. Resort security officer. When I got to the bungalow, he was standing at the door, sweaty, shirtless, and out of breath. He said his wife had fallen, but I noticed his knuckles were bleeding. That detailed bloody knuckles was crucial. Jonathan claimed they came from trying to catch her as she fell. But forensic experts testified the abrasions were consistent with punching. Olivia's testimony was devastating. She described hearing something heavy dragged across the wooden deck after the screaming stopped. Prosecutors argued this was Jonathan moving his wife's body from the bathroom to the bed, staging the scene before calling for help. With this testimony, the picture of Jonathan Reynolds as a grieving husband began to crumble, but the prosecution wasn't finished. They had one last piece of evidence that would drive the final nail into his defense, a recording he didn't know existed. It wasn't the police who found it. It wasn't the resort staff. It was her sister. Weeks after the murder, while collecting her belongings from Bora Bora, she noticed something strange tucked inside a silk scarf, a digital voice recorder. Her sister had a habit of recording personal thoughts, travel experiences, even late-night conversations. She carried it everywhere. On the night she died, it was in her purse, just feet away from the scene. The audio starts innocently enough. You can hear them laughing, teasing each other about the day's snorkeling trip. But within minutes, the tone shifts. Her voice becomes tense, his sharp and accusing. "Wife, why didn't you tell me about the money?" "Jonathan, you don't need to know everything." "Wife, you're lying to me, John." "Jonathan, you want to ruin this trip? Fine, let's ruin it." Then comes the sound of movement, a chair scraping, glass shattering. Her voice rises, desperate. "Wife, let go of me. You're hurting me." "Jonathan, stop screaming. No one's coming." The recording cuts off at 11:48 p.m., exactly 21 minutes before Jonathan's 911 call. For prosecutors, this was a missing piece, the moment where accident became murder. When the tape was played in court, the room fell silent. No cross-examination, no explanation could undo what they had just heard. The defense's narrative collapsed in seconds. But just as the trial seemed all but over, a bombshell emerged. The woman Jonathan had been texting in Miami, the one prosecutors painted as his mistress, came forward with claims so shocking it could change everything. Until now, she'd been a ghost in the case, a name in text messages, a face and photos pulled from Jonathan's phone. The prosecution called her the mistress, painting her as the motive for his greed. But when she agreed to testify, her story wasn't the confirmation they expected. It was a twist no one saw coming. Her name was Sofia Martinez, a Miami-based flight attendant who had met Jonathan on a layover in Madrid. She admitted they were romantically involved, but claimed she had no idea he was getting married. In fact, she insisted their relationship was more than just an affair. She said they had been planning something together. Jonathan told me he was leaving his wife, that she was controlling, violent even. He said she wanted him dead for the insurance money. He made it sound like it was him or her. The courtroom gasped. Was this an attempt to shift blame, or the first glimpse of a conspiracy? Sophia claimed Jonathan had asked for her help in protecting himself, and that they had discussed meeting in Bora Bora, but at the last minute, she backed out. Prosecutor: "Did you know there was a $2.5 million life insurance policy in her name?" Sophia: "No. He told me it was his policy, that she was the one trying to cash in." Sophia also revealed something investigators hadn't connected: a mysterious third person. She testified that Jonathan often mentioned a friend in finance who was helping him with paperwork. She didn't know his name, but described him as dangerous and involved in things you don't ask questions about. This raised a chilling possibility. Was Jonathan acting alone, or was his wife's death part a larger plot involving someone still out there? And if so, what was that person's role in the events of that night? But before the court could explore those questions, a letter arrived at the prosecutor's office and signed, "No return address." Inside was a single sentence: "Jonathan isn't the only one who deserves to be on trial." And attached was a photo taken in Bora Bora the night of the murder. It was taken from the wooden walkway connecting the bungalows to the shore. The moonlight glistens on the lagoon, and in the foreground, Jonathan Reynolds, standing shirtless on his deck, staring into the water. His wife is nowhere in sight, but it's the background that made prosecutors freeze. The silhouette didn't match any resort guest on record. Security logs showed no one was staying in that particular bungalow that night, and yet there he was, watching, recording, waiting. Detective LeClaire: "We thought we knew the scope of this crime." But this photograph suggested there was someone else there, someone we hadn't identified. Investigators scoured resort bookings, employee rosters, and boat logs. No match. The mystery man was a ghost, no trace before or after that night. But for the defense, the image was a gift. They argued it was proof Jonathan wasn't alone, that another figure could have been involved in his wife's death. Prosecutor: the presence of a shadow does not erase the blood on the defendant's hands. Defense attorney: you cannot convict a man when a second suspect is literally in the picture. After weeks of testimony, graphic evidence, and emotional witness statements, the fate of Jonathan Reynolds rested in the hands of 12 jurors. The world watched as they filed back into the courtroom, their verdict sealed in a folded piece of paper. And when the foreman stood, the judge asked the question everyone had been waiting for. Has the jury reached a verdict? The answer would decide whether Jonathan Reynolds would spend the rest of his life in prison, or walk free into the arms of an unsolved mystery. That verdict shocked everyone. Judge: has the jury reached a verdict? Foreman: we have, Your Honor. The foreman's voice didn't shake. His eyes stayed fixed on the paper as he read the words that would change lives forever. Foreman: on the charge of first-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant, Jonathan Reynolds, guilty. The sentence was immediate. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the family of the victim, it was justice served. But for investigators, it was far from the end. Because that man, the one in the shadows, was never identified. He never came forward. And somewhere out there, he knows exactly what happened that night in Bora Bora. She believed she was starting a new life. Instead, she became part of a mystery, one that still whispers across the water, under the same moon that shone the night she died. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more stories, where each case isn't just about crime, but also offers a lesson for life.